Good day, you're watching Businessworld Live. I'm Danie, Laurel, and here are today's top stories. The International Monetary Fund warns that global shocks may weigh on Philippine economic growth in 2023. Now, the Chinese embassy denies that the Philippines is included in Beijing's tourism blacklist. The embassy even says the report of tourist blacklist is, quote, misinformation. House Speaker Martin Romualdez vows the swift approval of priority measures that have been endorsed by the Legislative Executive Development Advisory Council, or the LEDAC. And the government revives drilling operations at the Cadlao oil field over in Palawan. The offshore facility is expected to generate up to 6 million barrels of oil in early production. We begin our broadcast with the International Monetary Fund cautioning that global shocks may weigh on domestic growth in 2023. The multilateral lender says that while the Philippines is poised to remain one of the strongest performers in the region next year, the country may face headwinds arising from a looming global slowdown. This as the IMF trimmed its global economic growth forecast to 2.7%. That's from 2.9% previously. It cited the impact of the prolonged war in the Ukraine, a cost of living crisis caused by persistent inflationary pressures, and the slowdown in China for its updated global forecast. Now, back home, the lender expects domestic growth to hit 6.5% this year and 5% in 2023. The government's GDP target for 2022 is set at 6.5% to 7.5%, while the projection for 2023 is between 6% to 8%. The Chinese embassy denies placing the Philippines on a, quote, tourist blacklist. In a statement, the embassy described the claim as, quote, misinformation. This clarification follows the earlier statement of Senate President Mig Zubiri citing Chinese Ambassador Huang Xilian that the country was already on the blacklist because of continued operations of POGO companies. Zubiri eventually backtracked, saying that the remarks of the Chinese envoy may have been lost in translation. But in an interview with The Big Story, Zubiri says the country's tourism industry will suffer if it is indeed placed on a blacklist.
The hotel industry, the food industry, all the resorts, all the entertainment, of course, the entertainers that entertain our tourists in these areas where we have tourist spots, talagang mawawala yan. Imagine kung ilang porsyento lang ang bumisita sa ating bansa, ay talagang napakasayang ng investment opportunities.
Senator Win Gatchalian, meanwhile, tells One News' The Chiefs that the POGO industry is an unstable one. He says the crackdown on POGOs have already driven some operators to go underground.
Apparently, according to our police, they're finding out right now because this underground POGOs are not registered with PAGCOR. They operate behind the shadows, and only the policemen can detect them because they're the ones operating on the streets.
Congress vows the swift passage of the 30 endorsed bills that comprise President Marcos's legislative agenda. House Speaker Martin Romualdez says the lower house will pass the priority measures, quote, with dispatch, but without sacrificing the quality of legislation. He adds that Congress is in full support of Marcos's entire legislative agenda, including the key priority measures that he asked Congress to consider. Marcos's priority bills include the national government's right-sizing program, the Real Property Valuation Bill, the E-Governance Act, and the Internet Transaction Act. Also included in the list are the Retirement and Pension Bill, the Department of Water Resources Bill, Budget Modernization Bill, and the Natural Defense Act. Lawmakers have agreed to approve 6 of Marcos's priority measures by the year end. These include amendments to the Build, Operate, and Transfer Law, the mandatory ROTC and NSTP program, and the bill establishing a Virology Science and Technology Institute. The other measures are flashed on your screens. Meanwhile, the House and Senate have also enumerated their priority measures during the LEDAC meeting. These include the bill establishing regional specialty hospitals, the new Philippine Passport Act, and the Magna Carta for barangay health workers. The rest of lawmakers' priority bills are flashed on your screens. Now here to weigh in on which LEDAC-sponsored bills the business community wants to see passed ASAP, we have with us George Barcelon, President of the Philippine Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Good morning, Sir George.
Good morning, April. Morning.
Sir, LEDAC has endorsed 30 bills, and of course, we just had the SIM Card Registration Act so far signed, but there will still be a number of bills. They've promised 6 by the year end to be passed. Which do you deem most urgent?
Well, I think the Electric Power Reform Act is important. That's one of the pressing issue on the industry. And the other e-government Act, and Internet Transaction Act is also important. I think in the past 2 years, we noticed that for those who were able to agile enough to shift to a digital platform, they're able to survive. So the digital aspect of it and connectivity is quite important. The land use act, land use law that's being looked into is important when we move ahead in the sector, such as President BBM give importance to, is the agri sectors. So those are that's also very important. The Apprenticeship Act law must also be looked into because this is one area wherein we need to tweak it a bit in order to invest in our young for their skills and also to provide jobs. So those are, I think, key legislative issues that hopefully, with the promise of the Speaker, Martin Romualdez, that they will act on those as soon as possible. Of course, all the rest are important. The 30 priority bills that stated during his SONA has all the making of improving our government efficiency and also allowing. But I believe that it's important to have the sort of registration of those SIM card because it has been abused over a period of time. And like anywhere else, no, if you go to a country and then you get the SIM card, you have to register in detail your passport number and whatnot. And I think it's prudent to have something like this, as long as the government side on it doesn't abuse its access to information.
All right. Sir, shifting over to the economic situation, we just had the trade gap widening in the month of August. You, of course, sit in PhilExports. What is going on with the export sector still contracting by 2% in August? Will this be persisting? And does that mean, sir, that the peso depreciation, which you mentioned earlier in some of our other interviews, should have benefited the export sector? Does that mean that this advantage did not offset the importation bill?
The issue on the logistic has still been persistent. The cost of cargo space has been going up. And that's one of the reasons why the export sector has been affected. On the trade balance, primarily is because a requirement for fuel, food-related commodities has all gone up. Coal price has gone up over the last month. And all of this requires more dollar for the requirement. And that's why the gap on the is suddenly so big. The export per se, I think there'll be more export in the forthcoming months. Export to the North America is more towards November, December, and January. So we should see a better performance on the export and the reducing of the that gap between import and export.
Sir, was there any signs that part of the trade gap is related to capital formation? Of course, we've been having a deficit even since the previous administration on the back of build, build, build. But, are these numbers going to be persisting as we try to recover from the pandemic and start with the infrastructure programs of PBM?
The apparent weakness in our currency, of course, over the past so many months, the peso appreciated by about 6 to 7%. And there's been a bit of outflow of money, dollars going out, and that also has some bearing to this. Although it's not directly to the trade gap, no, but it has some bearing to our reserve, foreign currency reserve. But we still have enough to finance the requirement. We're still in the high $90 billion or so. So it's still enough to support the requirement of our materials and fuel. But it's a concern because the U.S. Federal Reserve is talking about interest hike again in the forthcoming month. And we have to, Banco Central has to monitor it carefully so that our currency will not depreciate too much. We're now hovering on the 59, and there's been talk that it will be moving upward or lower, no, towards 60. That doesn't bode well for us because import of goods and services all will relatively go up.
Sir, given this and the pressing issue, of course, of inflation, your thoughts on President BBM touting importing oil and possibly other commodities from Russia?
Well, I think that's a good move. When in New York, he categorically stated that Indonesia, one of the highlights was he was able to work with the or get the assurance from the Indonesian government that they will support us on the supply of our cost inputs in both our agriculture and also in the energy sectors.
Okay, and finally, sir, before we let you go, where do you stand on this POGO shutdown issue? 23,000 domestic jobs might be lost, but of course there are other social problems relating to this.
Well, the issue on the POGO is that there are, aside from what we hear on the social problem, which is true, but there are legitimate POGO operators wherein they are a source of revenue for the government. Now, I think it's a question of balancing whether we can sustain them and be getting the revenue that we expect them to contribute and offset that with some of the issues, social problems that we're having. By the way, as far as the POGO is concerned, what we read from the Chinese government side, they're not exactly encouraging, or to put it bluntly, they are discouraging POGO operations. No? And we just have to read between the line where we stand on this.
All right, thank you so much for those insights. That was, of course, George Barcelon, President of the Philippine Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Thank you, sir. Pausing for a quick break, but right after that, the Energy Department warns of more oil price hikes in the coming weeks. More of that and other stories when Business World Live returns. Stay with us. you're still watching Businessworld Live here on One News. I'm Danie, Laurel. While the newly signed SIM registration law is seen to curb text scams, some stakeholders have raised privacy concerns over this measure. Mobile journalist Pamela Vasquez with the details.
Text spam and scam messages may soon be a thing of the past once the law mandating the registration of SIM cards takes effect. On Monday, the SIM Card Registration Act became the first law to be signed by President Bongbong Marcos. According to Senator Grace Poe, existing postpaid and prepaid mobile phone subscribers will have to register their SIM cards within 180 days or 6 months from the effectivity of the law.
Pag yan ay tuluyan na talagang naging batas, no, yung mga telco, kailangan na silang kumilos para iparehistro ang ating mga kababayan.
Poe added that registration of SIM cards will not be a hassle for Filipinos, as this can be done online. For those on the less techy side, individuals may register their SIM cards in official stores. While many say that the law is the key to solving scam messages, one privacy expert begs to disagree.
If you will really think about it, this policy will do nothing in terms of identifying saan ba nanggaling yung mga pangalan natin, yung information natin. Because there is nothing in the law, in the policy, that will help solve that.
Senator Poe, on the other hand, said that only telcos should be the one handling the registration.
Kasi nga, pinag-iingatan natin yung inyong impormasyon. Kung napakaraming nakakakuha niyan, ay talagang mahihirapan tayong tuntunin kung sino nagkaroon ng data breach.
Poe has since asked telcos to submit their verified list of subscribers to the National Telecommunications Commission. Individuals are not limited to the number of SIM cards they can have, as long as these are registered under their name. A SIM card may also be registered for use by a minor but should be under the name of a parent or a guardian. Violators, meanwhile, could be fined from 100,000 pesos to 4 million pesos. Mobile journalist Pamela Vasquez, We Are One News.
The Agriculture Department has set the price cap for red onions at 170 pesos per kilo in Metro Manila to address the rising prices of the commodity. Shaila Francisco with these details.
Higher prices of red onions alone are enough to make you cry. In Metro Manila markets, red onions now cost up to 250 pesos per kilo. To temper prices, the Agriculture Department has set a suggested retail price of 170 pesos per kilo effective Wednesday. But retailers say they may not be able to comply.
Aba, luging-lugi kami. Ang namumuhunan na yata kami ng 200 per kilo o 190.
The DE says the SRP will help identify why prices are rising despite stable supply. Currently, retail prices are much higher compared to wholesale prices. The wholesale price of red onion in Balantawak is between 145 to 170 pesos, much lower than the 180 to 250 peso range in markets.
Pag nag-ikot naman po ang market master and ang enforcement team, meron naman pong chance ang ating mga retailers to explain bakit ganun ang presyo. Pero rest assured sa ating mga consumers, tinututukan po natin ang presyo ng red onions and we will ensure na tama po ang presyo. So hindi lamang po ang ating retailer ang ating tinitingnan ang presyo, pati po wholesaler.
Aside from this, consumers are also struggling with vegetables getting more expensive. Lowland varieties, for one, have gone up by as much as 60 pesos from a month ago. Highland vegetables are also 50 pesos more expensive.
Napakamahal na ang gulay para sa mga Pilipino. Afford pa rin naman nung mga may kaya talaga, pero yung mga middle income pababa, nararamdaman na talaga. Mas mahal ngayon, mas malaking halaga ang binabayad ko ngayon kumpara before.
Meanwhile, prices of refined sugar still haven't gone down. As of end September, prices in supermarkets go as high as 134 pesos, while wet markets sell refined sugar by up to 110 pesos a kilo. The DA plans to release an SRP on refined sugar by November. The agency still mum on the target price, but sources say the SRP could be up to 85 pesos per kilo. As for vegetables, there will be no SRP due to volatile price movements, but the DA will set up more kadiwa centers to provide cheaper options for consumers. Shaila Francisco, We Are One News.
Heads up motorists, the Energy Department warns of more oil price hikes in the coming weeks. Now, according to Oil Industry Management Bureau Director Rino Abad, fuel prices are seen to soar in an anticipation of a decrease in global supply. This as the OPEC Plus is expected to slash its production by 2 million barrels per day starting November. But Abad raises doubts on whether the OPEC Plus will push through with its decision.
I-increase pa ang price niyan, in-expect natin hanggang November. Pero sa November, pag hindi nila tinupad yan, hindi kinaya ni Russia, hindi pumayag si United Arab Emirates, siyempre kung mag-iisa na lang si Saudi, hindi na rin niya gagawin yan.
Automobile sales in the country surged in September. That's driven by strong demand for commercial vehicles. Latest data shows that vehicle sales posted a year-on-year increase of 64.2%. This is according to the Chamber of Automotive Manufacturers of the Philippines and the Truck Manufacturers Association. The group say this is the 7th straight month that the country posted double-digit annual growth. Now, demand for commercial vehicles has seen an increase. That's as the House Committee approved the fourth package of the tax reform program in August. This measure includes a provision that seeks to eliminate the excise tax exemption for pickup trucks. The Marcos administration expects the Cadlao oil field to bring, quote, recoverable volumes of 5 to 6 million barrels of oil towards the second half of next year. This comes after the Energy Department allowed Nido Petroleum Philippines to proceed with an on-site survey for drilling locations in the Palawan Basin by the fourth quarter. President Marcos said the plan to conduct the survey in the Cadlao oil field will encourage investors to enter the country's oil and gas sector. Now, aside from this, the palace says the cabinet is also looking into other options to address the rising prices of petroleum.
Sa cabinet meeting, merong discussion about that, pero nag-consider sila ng mga options. And in time, mag-a-announce po sila, I'm sure, ng mga specific plans and programs to address that issue.
And Filipinos will have to wait a little longer to experience internet services by Elon Musk's Starlink. The operation of Starlink Philippines has been moved to mid-2023. That's according to the Department of Information and Communications Technology. The agency says the delay is due to challenges in launching 4,400 satellites needed for operation. Starlink Philippines had initially set its operations to begin by December of 2022. The Philippines is set to be the first Southeast Asian country to experience Starlink services. And those are the biggest stories on the economic and corporate front today. I'm Danie, Laurel. We are One News, all sides, all the time. But don't go away. We'll give you the latest on the local boards when Businessworld Live returns. Stay with us. still watching Businessworld Live here on One News. I'm Danie, Laurel. Now quick over to the local bourse. You can see after yesterday, the shares gaining on the back of bargain hunting after that 3-day drop. And even amid the rest of Asia looking rather reddish, you can see us continuing that uptick. We're up by 0.3% to 58.69 levels this morning, even amid all of those warnings, particularly in the Bank of England, that they might be taking out some emergency support. Let's take a look at our movers this morning. You can see Converge up by 1.9%, PLDT as well up by 1.5%. Incidentally, two of our telco or connectivity players here on the downside. You still have several worst performing stocks here. You've got Emperador as well down by 1%, ICTSI down by 1.4%. Now speaking of ICTSI, quick check here on the Razon stocks. This as another IPO this year will be postponed, and that is Prime Infra. That will be moved to next year. The target will be first half of 2023. Now of course, this is originally a renewable energy solar farm and battery. It was supposed to be 25.6 billion pesos of an IPO, biggest this year, one of the largest ever we have seen. If you take a look at ICTSI, feeling some pain here, but you can look at Bloomberry, which is going the opposite direction, up by more than 4.3%. Quick check finally on some of these solar stocks, if they have been moving, of course, on the back of that IPO being postponed, different ways in which they're going. SPNEC in particular down by 0.9%. And still on energy, just a quick peek at the mining and oil and gas sectors here. As of course, BBM has mentioned that he intends to maximize the oil and gas sector, keep the tax breaks to attract the investors, and as of course his administration has engaged in fuel talks with Russia, also seeking to compromise with Beijing on oil. Take a look at PXP Energy Corporation here, which of course has some stakes over in the West Philippine Sea, up by 7.8% today. And that's it for today, October 12, 2022. Join us again tomorrow at exactly 9:30 a.m. You can also catch us on Signal Play. Register for a free account now at www.signalplay.com and stream One News live anytime, anywhere. I'm Danie Laurel. Stay safe, Philippines. We are One News, all sides, all the time.